Hello everyone. Yesterday I made a video showing how to decrease in Irish moss stitch, and I got some feedback on that video saying that my picture was too dark and that I couldn't be heard very well. And so I'm trying to make another one. I'm sorry about the lighting. It's just there's not a lot of light this time of year. It's cloudy, it's dark, and the light in this room isn't that great, but I don't have a lot of places where I can go where my kids aren't going to interrupt. So anyway, so I'm trying to make a cardigan for my niece, and I've started it here, and you can see I've got, I'll try not to, this ribbing right here. This is the edge, the bottom edge, and then up here is the Irish moss stitch. They kind of look like little diamonds. That's how I describe it. And the pattern that I'm using, the moss stitch, it takes 4 rows of knitting to make the moss stitch. And the first row, you start with a purl, and you go purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, all the way to the end. And then rows 2 and 3 both start with a knit stitch, and you do the opposite of row 1. You go knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, all the way to the end. And then when you get to row 4, you go back to the same thing that you were doing on row 1, which is you start with a purl, and you purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, all the way to the end. You get this really beautiful looking pattern, or, design. And the problem that I came across with while doing this pattern is that it tells you to decrease 1 stitch at the end of each row. And when I would do that, it would somehow throw the pattern off, and I would end up with this really weird looking ribbing. And I don't have a picture. I didn't take a picture of it. I actually got extremely frustrated and ripped it out probably 4 or 5 times, trying different things to try to make this pattern work and get this, and not, break this beautiful moss stitch. Because what I was doing, you would have moss stitch, and then you would have this weird ribbing, and then you would have more moss stitch above that where I was no longer doing the decreases. And I even looked on YouTube, and I was trying to find a video tutorial how to decrease in this particular pattern without messing up your pattern, your design. And I couldn't find anything. So I finally had to ask a veteran knitter of a friend of mine, and she told me something that works, and so I wanted to share it with everybody. There's probably more than one way to do this, but the way that she shared with me has been the way that has worked, and so I wanted to share it with you all in case somebody else is having the same problem that I'm having, because the pattern that I have doesn't say, when you get to the decrease row, this is what you have to do. It just says decrease, and you're expected to know how to adapt the stitching, to make it work, and I didn't know how to do that. So basically what you end up doing is on your very first row of the 4 is where you start your decreasing. So you just start knitting in the pattern as it says. So you would, I'm not going to show you how to do it because I'm holding the camera with my left hand and I can't do this, but basically you would start on this end and you would purl your first stitch, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, until you get all the way to the last 2 stitches on the needle. And what you would want to do is purl these 2 together, and that will give you your first decrease. Then you turn your work over, and normally in the pattern you would start with a knit stitch on the next row. Well, you don't want to do that because if you do it, it's going to throw your pattern off and you're going to get that weird ribbing like I was getting. So what you want to do is, because you ended on you purled 2 together at the end, you want to start your next row with another purl stitch. So instead of repeating or starting the row 2 where you would go knit 1, purl 1, you would just kind of repeat row 1 again, and you go purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, all the way to the very end until you get to the last 2 stitches again, because you're supposed to continue decreasing. In my pattern, I'm supposed to decrease until I have so many stitches. So again, I would just purl the last 2 stitches together and then flip it over, and again start my row over with a purl stitch. Purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. And I'm going to keep repeating that over and over until I'm done with my decreases. And once I get to my last decrease, I'll decrease it like normal and then flip it over. Probably what I end up doing is starting the next row with a purl stitch again. Purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, all the way to the end. And instead of purling the last 2 stitches together, because we're not going to decrease anymore at that point, I will just end it the way you normally would, and then flip the work over and then start on a knit stitch and continue on in the pattern. And if you do that, it shouldn't break this design, and you should end up with a really nice, clean looking thing, and you won't be able to tell that you decreased, and other than maybe the shape on the sides, you might see that it's a little bit shorter, but you'll still be in pattern. You won't veer from this diamond shape. And that was my frustration, was that I could not get it to work, and I was about ready to just throw the pattern away and give up. But I've been knitting for a couple of years, but I'm not good enough to look at a pattern and be able to interpret it like this other lady was doing for me. So I'm thankful that I had somebody who could help me out, and I hope this video helps some other people out there who are struggling like I have been with this pattern. And so far it's working. I have one more row of decrease to do, and then I will go back to just the moss stitch, and then I have to just do, the moss stitch for like till the work, reaches like 19 inches long or something. I have to look at my pattern again, but so I have one more row of decrease, and then I'm done with my decreases. But again, I hope this has helped, and happy knitting to everybody out there.